When we think of Jesus' passion, we tend to focus on the physical ordeal that he endured. The Stations of the Cross, for instance, focus almost entirely on that. But there's more going on in Jesus' passion. And my homily on the passion will be in two parts. The first part today will focus on what is going on. And the second part on Good Friday will focus on why Jesus did what he did. What's going on in Jesus' passion? It seems to me we must begin at the beginning, really, of the story, of Jesus' whole story. We often describe what Adam and Eve did as disobedience, but the rupture that was brought about between God and human beings goes deeper than that. Human beings were made by God for God, to enjoy life with God as God's creatures. And what Adam and Eve said by their disobedience was, we do not want to be your creatures. We want to be equal to you. Since they embodied all of humanity in their act in a way that we don't really understand, what was needed was someone who could, again, embody all of humanity and reverse their act, who would surrender himself and thereby all of humanity back to God. What was needed, as Paul realized, was a new Adam. There was no human being that could do this, so God sent his only Son, the divine Word, to be the new Adam. And the divine Word began by humbling himself, letting go of the form of God and being born in the form of humans. He had to be of human estate, as we just heard in the reading from Philippians. And so he took on our human nature. He was born a human being. And then he was presented in the temple. Remember, just 8 days after he was born, we call it the presentation. But remember, when the Son was presented in the temple, he was circumcised. And so Jesus was circumcised. He was made part of Israel, because the promise was that the Messiah would come from Israel. And the way one became part of Israel was through circumcision. The way a man, obviously, became part of Israel. Jesus, though, was born without sin. Right? He was, as we'll hear in the preface this morning, innocent. So, it was not enough to take on our human nature, because in God's justice, it would not be justice for an innocent person to suffer as the cause of sin. Human beings were not innocent. So Jesus had to even take on our need for redemption. And he does that when he enters the waters of the Jordan to be baptized. Remember, John's baptism was a baptism for the forgiveness of sins. And so he steps into the Jordan, and as Isaiah said, then he was numbered with the transgressors. He not only became a human being taking on human nature, but he took on, though innocent, he took on our guilt. So what is going on in Jesus' passion? The first answer we might give is he is standing for all humanity. He's being the new Adam. He's standing before God in all our guilt. What else is going on? Let's go back to the beginning again. Satan was well aware of what was going on. Remember, he instituted the rupture between us and God by tempting Eve and influencing Adam. And so it was logical that he would try to stop Jesus' mission to redeem us. Satan was at war with Jesus from the beginning. Remember Herod's fear when he heard of the impending birth of the newborn king of the Jews. Who do you think was feeding that fear? Who put the idea into Herod's head to kill all children 2 years age and younger so that he could kill the newborn king? Who do you think, although it was Herod's choice, he was a free acting agent, who do you think was urging him to do what we call the massacre of the holy innocents? It was only through the message of the angel and the faith, courage, and obedience of Joseph that Satan's plan was thwarted. But Satan did not give up. Immediately following Jesus' baptism, he goes into the desert, and Satan comes again, tempting Jesus this time to leave his father's plan, and establish himself. It is his own power. Jesus resisted, however. Even Satan tempts him clearly, worship me, not God. Jesus resists, acting as Adam and Eve should have acted. And so Satan left Jesus, not for good, but as Luke writes, he leaves until an opportune time. And Jesus' passion is the opportune time. As Edward Sri points out in his book on Christ's passion, the true enemy of Christ is not the chief priests, Herod or Rome, but rather a much fiercer opponent, the devil. In these last few days of Jesus' life, Satan throws every weapon he can at Jesus. And think about some of these things. It's possible I'm overstating it, but I don't think so. Everyone, everything and everyone comes at Jesus in these days. His own disciples, his closest group of friends, deserts him. One of them betrays him. One of them denies him. Who's feeding all that weakness? Who's suggesting all these things? They're not pawns. They act freely. Even to the three who can't stay awake. I don't know. Again, I'm not insisting on it, but your best friend is sorrowful even unto death, he tells them, and you can't stay awake to comfort him? It just seems to me I can't let go of the idea that there's more going on, that they're just a little tired. People lie about him. The leaders of his own religion are against him. He's beaten, scourged, he's mocked, etc., on and on. Everything comes at Jesus. So what is going on in Jesus' passion? He's engaged in the last battle of Satan's war against humanity. What else is going on? As I say, we tend to look at the events and the ordeal that Jesus goes through. But there's something beneath that. and it is suffering. If you think about it, although we tend to link the two together, I'm suffering with a headache, or I'm suffering with some disease, or I had to suffer through a meeting or something. There's a difference between the thing and the suffering. This is the way one of my theological dictionaries puts it. Suffering is the disruption of inner human harmony caused by physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional forces experienced as isolating and threatening our very existence. We know this, right? One person can have a toothache, let's say, and says, well, it's a toothache, and goes about her business, goes to work or does whatever she's doing, While someone else says, oh my God, I have a toothache, and they go to bed for the day, It's not the toothache, it's the suffering. We have different thresholds of pain, right? And the same level of pain can aggravate you and completely destroy me, And so Jesus isn't just being mocked. He isn't just being scourged. He's suffering. I'm sorrowful even to death, to the point where he prays to God, please let this pass from me. And so look beyond the physical pain or emotional torture or whatever, the disappointment of his friends. Look beyond that. See Jesus suffering. And he does that for a number of reasons, I think. But one is he enters completely into human nature. He's really tempted. That's not a fake thing. He's tempted by Satan in his humanity. He suffers in his humanity. See, suffering is brought about through evil. Without evil, there would be no suffering. Without that Adam and Eve's sin, original sin, there would be no suffering. And so, because human beings suffer, Jesus, who took on a real human nature, must suffer. He stands with us and for us in every aspect of human life. So what is going on in Jesus' passion? And knowing that more can be said, right? But Jesus, having taken on our human nature and everything attendant on it, including our need for redemption, the experience of death, the experience of suffering. He's battling Satan for our freedom from slavery to sin and death. He's paying the price of sin, not just by his physical ordeal, but by his suffering, emptying himself completely for us. Even literally, he has no possessions. He is crucified. His friends leave him. Crucifixion, and we should remind ourselves, is the worst possible death at the time. He's crucified as a criminal, as one who was guilty, known to be guilty, though innocent, hanging naked for all to see and mock. Remember, crucifixion was a public event. People were encouraged to go by. It was done in a place where people would pass by. And they were encouraged to mock and make fun of the one crucified. Completely obedient to the Father. He has nothing. He is given everything. To say for all of humanity to God, you are God, and I am not, and I will follow your will always.